I wasn't supposed to open the study door that night. House rules said be invisible, glide, and don't ask questions, but the mansion was too quiet, and the kind of quiet that hums in your bones. And when I turned that crystal knob, I saw Lucas Harrington slumped over his desk, with a glass on the floor, and pill bottles tipped like little gravestones, and a laptop blinking after 6 words. I wish I could unsee. I'm so tired of fighting this. I knew the math from the outside looked ugly. A young black housekeeper in the private study of the most public man in Mariner's Point. But breath is breath, you know what I mean. So I touched his shoulder, got nothing. Dialed 911 and said, "Please hurry," because I could hear something slipping away that wasn't mine to lose. The paramedics moved like a drill. One of them said, "Stable." Barely. Then they wheeled him past me, and for a heartbeat his eyes opened and found mine. And I couldn't tell if it was gratitude or a man surprised to still be here. Either way, when the sirens faded, I straightened the room so it didn't look like a confession, capped bottles blacked out. The screen sat in his chair, shaking, because I knew how rich people treat privacy like oxygen, and I might have just traded our rent for a headline, but Nana May raised me to hold a life steady till help arrives and worry about the noise after. 3 weeks earlier, I was the girl at the Iron Gate with 1 good dress, 2 bus transfers, and a resume that made Ms. Whitmore, the head housekeeper, with razor blue eyes, ask if I was reliable. I told her the truth. I only miss work when the hospital keeps my grandmother overnight. She stared, a beat softened a hair, and said, "Report, Monday at 7, rules are simple. You'll rarely see Mr. Harrington, and if you do, you are invisible. No phones, no friends, no curiosity. This place runs like a museum, and you are the ghost that keeps it clean." I learned the layout fast, and the grief faster. Meals went untouched. Rooms looked staged for a catalog air, so sterile it felt like a prayer you didn't mean. And on his desk, a black and white photo of a woman with wind in her hair, and a little boy on her shoulders told the rest of the story. The house was her dream. His guilt made it a crypt. Most nights around 2, I'd hear him talking low like a man negotiating with shadows, and I'd dust the east wing and try not to think about how drowning smells like wood polish when no one opens a window. 2 days after the hospital, he came back and set a test I wouldn't learn about, until later he stretched out on the leather couch, pretended to sleep. Left a wallet too close to the edge, scattered confidential board packets, like bait, set a crystal paperweight sized perfectly for the pocket, and waited to see who I was when no one was looking. I stepped in and froze because up close he wasn't the headline version. He was a person with a tired line cut into his forehead and a chest lifting steady. For the first time in a while I could have tiptoed out, or poked the bear, or touched what wasn't mine. Instead, I went to the linen closet, shook out a gray throw soft as a promise, and draped it over him. Without a rustle, I cracked the window 2 inches, so the ocean could sneak in, and set a jar of garden daisies on the table because the room smelled like yesterday, and yesterday was killing him. I dimmed the overhead, left the lamp, and at the door I looked back once and said, "Rest, not loud, just enough for me to hear it." The note came the next morning in a hand that looked like it hated being vulnerable. "Thank you for the flowers." The room could breathe. I wrote back, "The South Garden roses are opening this week. If you'd like a few," and from there the house started waking up in small ways, curtains open, coffee fresh, books in reach, and our notes drifted from polite to gently human, he wrote. I'd forgotten the sunset from the library window, I wrote. "It's better with the sash up the salt air, helps," he wrote. You're right, and for a while it wasn't romance and it wasn't even friendship. It was 2 people coaxing life back into a room and pretending that wasn't intimate. Then winter brought a storm in high heels, Cassandra Vale from Arden Capital. A smile like a knife and a tabloid crew at her shoulder. She breezed past Ms. Whitmore and sang Lucas like she owned the vowels. and the reporter started asking if the grieving CEO had found comfort with the help, late-night meetings, personal gifts. A young employee spending unusual hours care to comment, and I could feel my skin burning and my hands turning cold. Because some stories people want to believe, even before they hear them. Lucas didn't raise his voice. He said, "You have 30 seconds to get off my property or security will count them for you. Try printing one lie and your lawyers can talk to mine about the price of a paragraph." Cassandra tilted her head and said, "Truth is just who says it first," and left a perfume that made you cough. I walked into the back garden and sat on a cold stone bench and waited for my breathing to catch up. He found me there and said, "I'm sorry you had to hear that." And I said, "It's not about what I deserve. It's about what people see. They see me. They see you. They think they know the movie." He said, "I don't want you to leave." And my heart knocked on my ribs. But I told him, if I stay, every smile becomes evidence. Every cup of coffee a confession. Is that what you want? He didn't answer. He said, "Let me think," and I wished that could be enough. 2 weeks later, dawn arrived in blue and red. Lieutenant Ortega sat up at the kitchen table and said there's been a break in master bedroom and study, missing a pocket watch and a sapphire bracelet that belonged to his late wife. They questioned everyone, pulled footage. Then they opened our lockers, and in mine, wrapped in my own microfiber, sat that bracelet looking like a snake. My mouth said, "That's not mine," and my brain went empty. They cuffed me gentle and did the things they do when they've done them 100 times. And by noon, the headlines had me tried and convicted. Housekeeper caught red-handed, billionaire betrayed. The comments did what comments do, coded language. Pretending not to be about race and class and power, yeah, that happened. I made bail and went straight to resign because being near me was going to cost him. I put the letter on his desk. He said no, and I said, "Mr. Harrington," and the way he flinched at the formality told me everything. Being near me will cost you your board, your name, the company. Your wife dreamed with you. "I can't do that to you," he said. "Janelle, I don't care about any of that," and his eyes said he knew I did. I left with a box and cried on the bus, with my face turned to the window because strangers don't know what to do with a crying woman in a uniform. Here's where grief learned a new trick. While I was counting coins and appointments with a public defender, Lucas stopped sleeping and started hunting. He hired private investigators who made thorough look lazy. They pulled the street cam from the light but outside the estate, and there was a car parked for hours, the night before the break-in, and the plates belonged to Cassandra. They pulled bank records and found a thick envelope to a handyman named Miles Rudd 2 days before, and a maintenance log that said, "A service entrance key went missing from Ms. Whitmore's office last month." Nothing was a bow on a box, but the ribbon drew a line you could follow, and Lucas walked it into Ortega's office and laid it down and said, "You're missing the story." They brought Cassandra in. She laughed until the copy of a text came out. Locker used the cloth, so it looks like hers, and then she asked for a lawyer. And within 48 hours, she was bargaining. Rudd had hopped a fence, pocketed 2 small things, and tucked one where it would ruin my life all, so Cassandra could break a rival's judgment and buy her way into the company for pennies, the Evening News said. Exonerated, and the same outlets that dragged me spelled my name right this time. You know what I mean. He showed up at our crooked hallway door, holding roses from his garden, like an apology. "You could smell," he said. "I'm sorry for not protecting you faster, for letting someone use my pain as a crowbar on your life. I'm not sorry I met you, and I'm not sorry. You changed that house, and if you let me, I'll spend every day proving the story they told about you was wrong. We didn't kiss like a movie. We sat on a thrift store couch and told the truth about loneliness and power, and how kindness is expensive and worth it anyway. Months later, he stood in Nana's backyard with fireflies showing off, and a small box in his shaking hands, and he said, "Janelle, you saved my life more than once. Home isn't a building. It's the courage to let the right person in. Will you marry me?" And my yes wasn't dainty. It was relief and joy, and all the seconds I'd spent hating a world that judges girls like me before we open our mouths. We married under market lights in his garden. Ms. Whitmore ran the thing like Normandy with peonies. The guest list was short on influencers and long on people who answer the phone at 3 a.m. And our vows were simple. Keep the windows open, tell the truth, even when it's messy. When the past tries to shout over the present, then we ate cake on the terrace and nobody cared when champagne hit the stone. 2 weeks later, the board asked for a special session, and the agenda leaked like things leak when people still owe Cassandra favors. Headline said billionaire names, former housekeeper, to lead family foundation, conflict of interest, or course correction. I sat at our kitchen table with the letter and a pen and thought about power, about locks and keys, and who gets framed when a story needs a villain, about buses and pharmacies, and how many people live one bad headline away from losing everything I signed. Because Nana looked at me over cornbread and said, "You've been holding lives steady your whole life, might as well do it with a budget." Maybe you're listening and thinking he was your boss. This is messy, and you're not wrong to ask hard questions. Power is messy, grief is messy, headlines are lazy. But here's what's also true. He met me in apology, not accusation. He fought for the truth with receipts, not tweets. He learned how to open the windows. When pride said, "Keep them shut," and me, I learned it isn't weakness to let good in after bad. It's grown woman strength. So judge if you need to. I'll be here writing grants to shorten bus rides and keeping the study window cracked so the ocean can find its way in. Your turn now. If you were me that night, would you have called 911? Knowing how fast a story like mine can get twisted? Do you think love and power can ever sit at the same table without tilting? It is naming me to the foundation, a real correction, or just a prettier kind of favoritism. Tell me what feels right, what feels wrong, what you've lived through. Drop your take in the comments. And if this hit you somewhere true, share it with the one friend who still believes kindness, loud or quiet, changes more than any scandal ever will.